The question everyone asks: are Ashkenazi Jews really European? It's a question that comes up constantly, in academic debates, in political arguments, in comment sections across the internet. Some say Ashkenazi Jews are just Europeans who converted to Judaism centuries ago. They point to fair skin, light eyes, and Yiddish, a Germanic language, as evidence that Ashkenazi Jews are fundamentally European. Others claim the opposite, that Ashkenazi Jews have no meaningful connection to Europe at all, that they are purely Middle Eastern, and that any European ancestry is negligible. Still others spread conspiracy theories, claiming that Ashkenazi Jews descend entirely from a Turkic kingdom called the Khazars, and therefore have no legitimate connection to ancient Israel. So which is it? Are Ashkenazi Jews European? Middle Eastern? Both? Neither? The loudest voices online often present simple, extreme answers. But the truth is far more nuanced and far more interesting. Today we're breaking this down carefully, using history, genetics, and archaeology. Not politics, not conspiracy theories, not internet myths, just evidence. Because understanding who the Ashkenazi Jews really are requires understanding how diaspora communities form, how populations migrate and mix, and how identity persists across centuries of change. If you love Jewish stories, make sure you subscribe to Jews Chronicles. Who are Ashkenazi Jews? Before we talk about DNA and origins, we need to establish context. Ashkenazi Jews are the Jewish communities that developed primarily in Central and Eastern Europe, in the lands that are now Germany, France, Poland, Lithuania, Ukraine, Belarus, Russia, Hungary, and surrounding regions. The word Ashkenaz was a medieval Hebrew term associated with the German lands. In Jewish geographic terminology, Ashkenaz meant Germany, the way Sepharad meant Spain. Jews living in German-speaking regions became known as Ashkenazim. Today, Ashkenazi Jews constitute the majority of Jews worldwide, particularly in the United States, where most Jewish Americans have Ashkenazi ancestry. Before the Holocaust, Ashkenazi Jews numbered around 16 million. The Holocaust murdered approximately 6 million, predominantly Ashkenazi, reducing this population catastrophically. But Ashkenazi history does not begin in Poland or Russia, where most Ashkenazi Jews lived by the 19th century. The earliest medieval Ashkenazi communities developed along the Rhine River, in cities like Mainz, Worms, Speyer, and Cologne, in the 9th and 10th centuries. These communities produced great scholars, developed distinctive religious traditions, and created the Yiddish language from a blend of German and Hebrew. Before that, before the Rhineland communities, evidence suggests Jewish populations lived in Roman Italy and throughout southern Europe for centuries before moving northward. Jewish communities existed in Rome as early as the 2nd century BCE, over 2,000 years ago. So the Ashkenazi story begins in Europe, but that does not automatically mean it began as European. We need to trace the thread further back. One of the most popular claims online is the Khazar theory. This theory argues that Ashkenazi Jews descend primarily or even entirely from the Khazars, a Turkic kingdom that existed in the Caucasus region and southern Russia from roughly the 7th to the 10th centuries CE. Historical sources suggest that the Khazar ruling class converted to Judaism sometime in the 8th or 9th century CE, an unusual event that has fascinated historians for centuries. If the entire Khazar population converted and later became the Ashkenazi Jews, it would mean Ashkenazi Jews are not descended from ancient Israelites at all, but from Central Asian Turkic converts. This theory was popularized in the 20th century, and has been weaponized by various groups seeking to delegitimize Jewish identity and Jewish connection to the land of Israel. Here is the problem. Modern genetic studies do not support this theory. Major population genetics studies, published in prestigious journals such as Nature Communications, the American Journal of Human Genetics, and Genome Biology, all show consistent Middle Eastern ancestry in Ashkenazi Jewish populations. If Ashkenazi Jews descended primarily from Turkic Khazars, we would expect significant Central Asian genetic signatures. We do not see those signatures. Instead, we see strong Middle Eastern ancestry, similar to other Jewish populations around the world. Although a Khazar conversion probably took place, and some converts may have joined Jewish communities, there is little evidence that this explains a large share of Ashkenazi ancestry. Perhaps some genetic contribution occurred, but the core of Ashkenazi ancestry traces elsewhere. Most serious geneticists consider the Khazar replacement theory scientifically unsupported. It persists not because of evidence, but because it serves certain political narratives. If you love Jewish stories, make sure you subscribe to Jews Chronicles. So if not Khazars, what do genetics actually tell us about Ashkenazi origins? Modern DNA analysis examines multiple types of genetic inheritance. Y chromosome DNA traces paternal lineages, passed from father to son. Mitochondrial DNA traces maternal lineages, passed from mother to children. Autosomal DNA represents overall ancestry, the full genetic picture inherited from all ancestors. Researchers have studied all three in Ashkenazi populations, and the results are remarkably consistent across multiple studies led by geneticists like Doron Bihar, Harry Osterer, and others. Finding 1. Strong Middle Eastern paternal ancestry. When scientists examine Y chromosome DNA, the paternal line, they find that Ashkenazi Jewish men share significant genetic markers with other Jewish populations worldwide, Sephardic, Mizrahi, and Yemenite, and with non-Jewish populations from the Levant. The most common Y chromosome haplogroups among Ashkenazi men, particularly J1 and J2, are characteristic of Middle Eastern populations. These are the same lineages found among other Jewish communities and among non-Jewish populations in the ancient Israelite homeland. This strongly suggests that Ashkenazi Jews descend, on the paternal side, from populations that originated in the ancient Near East. Finding 2. European maternal contribution. Interestingly, mitochondrial DNA studies tell a somewhat different story. A significant proportion of Ashkenazi maternal lineages trace back to southern Europe, particularly Italy and possibly Greece. This suggests a historical pattern. Early Jewish men migrated into Europe from the Middle East and married local women who converted to Judaism. These women's descendants became fully Jewish, and their mitochondrial DNA entered the Ashkenazi gene pool. This creates a population with Middle Eastern paternal roots and European maternal contributions. Far from being unusual, this is exactly how many diaspora populations form. Migrating groups, whether conquering armies, trading communities, or refugees, are often male-heavy initially. They marry local women, and over generations, a blended population emerges. Finding 3. The genetic bottleneck. Genetic studies also reveal that Ashkenazi Jews went through a severe population bottleneck approximately from 700 to 800 years ago, during the medieval period. At one point, the effective breeding population may have dropped to only a few hundred individuals. This small group then expanded dramatically over subsequent centuries, eventually reaching millions by the modern era. This bottleneck explains several features of Ashkenazi genetics. It explains why certain genetic diseases like Tay-Sachs, Gaucher disease, and BRCA mutations are more common among Ashkenazi Jews. When a small population expands, rare mutations that happen to exist in that founding group become more common. It explains the noticeable genetic clustering among Ashkenazi Jews. They are more genetically similar to each other than to surrounding populations because they descend from a relatively small founding group. But a bottleneck does not mean European origin. It simply means the population went through a period of small numbers before expanding. The ancestry of that small group still traces back to earlier migrations from the Middle East. What history and archaeology tell us? Genetics does not exist in a vacuum. Historical and archaeological evidence supports and illuminates the genetic findings. Jewish presence in Europe is documented long before the Khazar Empire even existed. We have clear evidence of Jewish communities in Rome as early as the 2nd century BCE. That is over 2,200 years ago, nearly 1,000 years before the Khazar conversion. The Roman Jewish community was large enough that Cicero complained about their political influence in 56 BCE. After the destruction of the Second Temple in 70 CE, Jews were dispersed throughout the Roman Empire. Many ended up in Italy, which became a major center of Jewish life in the early medieval period. From Italy, Jewish communities spread northward into Gaul and eventually into the German Rhineland. By 321 CE, we have documentation of a Jewish community in Cologne, Germany. Again, centuries before the Khazars converted. When medieval Ashkenazi communities appear in Mainz, Worms, and Speyer in the 9th and 10th centuries, they likely descended from earlier Jewish populations in Italy and southern Europe, who themselves descended from Jews dispersed from the land of Israel during Roman times. Many scholars propose the following trajectory for Ashkenazi origins: ancient Israel, Roman Judea, Italy, the Rhineland, and Eastern Europe. Jewish communities moved from the land of Israel into the Roman Empire, concentrated in Italy, gradually migrated northward along trade routes, established communities in the Rhineland, and then, especially after the Crusader massacres of 1096 and subsequent persecutions, moved further east into Poland, Lithuania, and Russia. This trajectory aligns with both historical records and genetic data. It explains the Middle Eastern core ancestry, the Southern European maternal contribution, and the geographic spread of Ashkenazi communities over time. If you love Jewish stories, make sure you subscribe to Jews Chronicles. So, are Ashkenazi Jews European? Now we can finally address the question directly. The honest answer: partially, but not fundamentally. Ashkenazi Jews are a diaspora population. They formed in Europe. They lived in Europe for over 1,000 years. They absorbed some European ancestry, particularly on the maternal side. They spoke Yiddish, a Germanic language. They developed cultural patterns influenced by their European environment. In that sense, yes, Ashkenazi Jews have European dimensions to their identity and ancestry. But genetically and historically, they retain deep Middle Eastern roots. Their core ancestry traces back to the ancient Levant. Their paternal lineages connect them to other Jewish populations worldwide and to the region of ancient Israel. Their religious traditions, texts, and collective memory all point back to origins in the land of Israel. They are not purely European. They are not purely Middle Eastern. They are a hybrid diaspora population, shaped by migration, adaptation, and centuries of living between worlds. The attempt to force a binary answer, either fully European or fully Middle Eastern, misunderstands how history actually works. It misunderstands how diaspora communities form and evolve over time. Diaspora populations are, by definition, shaped by multiple places and multiple influences. That does not make their identity less authentic. It makes their story more complex. This question isn't purely academic. It often arises in politically charged contexts. Some people use the question of Ashkenazi origins to argue that Jews have no legitimate connection to the land of Israel, that Jewish identity is somehow fabricated, or that modern Israel has no historical basis. The logic goes, if Ashkenazi Jews are really Europeans or Khazars with no Middle Eastern ancestry, then claims of connection to ancient Israel are fraudulent. Genetics does not support this narrative. The evidence consistently shows continuity between Jewish populations and ancient Levantine ancestry. Ashkenazi Jews, like Sephardic Jews and Mizrahi Jews, share genetic markers indicating descent from populations that lived in the ancient Near East. This does not mean Jewish identity depends on genetics. As discussed in other videos, Jewish identity is about far more than DNA. It includes religion, culture, language, memory, and covenant. Someone can convert to Judaism with no Jewish ancestry and be fully Jewish. For those who claim Ashkenazi Jews have no connection to ancient Israel, the genetic evidence is clear and contradicts that claim. At the same time, acknowledging European admixture in Ashkenazi ancestry does not weaken Jewish identity. It strengthens the story of survival and adaptation. It shows how a diaspora community maintained its core identity while absorbing influences from the lands where it lived. Diaspora means adaptation. That is not a weakness. It is how people survive across centuries and continents. What this actually teaches us. The pattern looks like this. A core ancestral group, in this case Jews from the ancient land of Israel. Migration into the Roman Empire, then northward into Europe. Intermarriage with local populations, particularly women who converted. Cultural blending, developing new languages like Yiddish, new customs, new religious expressions. Isolation, living as a distinct minority, maintaining separate identity. Population bottleneck, a period of small numbers due to persecution. Expansion, growth from that small founding population. distinct identity, maintaining connection to origins, while developing unique characteristics. This is exactly what happened with Ashkenazi Jews, and it is not unique to them. Similar patterns appear in other diaspora populations throughout history. What makes Jewish history distinctive is not racial purity, it is continuity through adaptation. The Torah traveled, the Talmud traveled, the Hebrew language survived. The prayers, the holidays, the collective memory all persisted even as communities evolved biologically and culturally. Jewish identity has never been about genetic purity. It has been about maintaining covenant, tradition, and peoplehood across changing circumstances. So are Ashkenazi Jews European? They are European Jews, Jews who lived in Europe, absorbed European influences, and developed distinctive European Jewish traditions. But their roots do not begin in Europe. They are descendants of ancient Israelites who migrated into the Roman Empire, moved through Italy, established communities in the Rhineland, and eventually spread across Eastern Europe. DNA tells a story of migration, resilience, interconnection, and continuity. Middle Eastern paternal ancestry, Southern European maternal contributions, a medieval bottleneck, centuries of relatively isolated community growth, and that story mirrors Jewish history itself. Jewish identity has never been static. It has always been a balance of peoplehood, faith, memory, and adaptation. Jews have lived in Babylon and Spain, in Morocco and India, in Poland and Yemen. Each community developed distinct characteristics while maintaining connection to the same texts, the same calendar, the same covenant. That balance of continuity and adaptation is why the Jewish people are still here, when so many other ancient peoples have vanished. Ashkenazi Jews are not simply European. They are not simply Middle Eastern. They are a diaspora people, shaped by all the places they have lived while maintaining the memory of where they began. And that story, told honestly, is far more remarkable than any simple answer could capture. If you love Jewish stories, make sure you subscribe to Jews Chronicles and share this documentary with someone who needs to understand this. Shalom.